Welcome to Leaning In, a space for curious conversation and active engagement. I, Tanja Mikvitz,
and I, Jessica Lusty, invite you to lean into life together, exploring what it means to live into transformational practices in our day-to-day lives as we engage in relationships, family dynamics, our conditioning, and the narratives of dominant culture.
How do we actually embody change in our own lives and as a collective? In this episode of Leaning In, we continue the conversation around collaboration versus competition and the idea of independence being championed in our culture whilst the reality of interdependence is neglected. We share our process and the work as an exploration of how the inner work and the outer world are in continuous pulsation and relationship. Jessica guides me, Tanja, in work around my inner storyline of being in strong, doing it all on my own and not needing anybody. Out of this work, bigger themes of aloneness and longing for connection emerge as both personal and a shared collective experience. We invite you in to feel through all of it, side by side with us. Hello, everyone. Hi, Jess. We're here for our second episode in our second season of Leaning In. And we were together just about a week ago, and we came into some deeper work with Jessica, and we aligned sort of post-new moon as well, setting intentions and being with where we were in the moon cycle. And now as we gather, it's a Sunday morning for Jessica, Sunday afternoon where I am in London. And we're sort of coming up to solstice time. So summer solstice in this hemisphere, of course, we're coming to the longest days, supposedly brightest days, though I have to admit there's a lot of cloud where I am and not quite as warm as we'd wish for. But if we think of it more symbolically, really like where do we want to cast the light? Where do we want to shine the light? Of course, we like to weave in the shadow work and sort of look at and try and bring forth what these sort of deeper driving forces within us are that are unconscious, that are probably formed quite early on in life, and how they really manifest in our day-to-day, in our relationships, and how we can start to attend to and work with it, and how we can first of all excavate it and then be in continuous process with it. So I also want to invite you, Jessica, to share maybe how you felt after we last met and you came into some quite deep and vulnerable places, which I also really want to honor that you're willing to open to in this space, that it's more of an open space, and that you're inviting all of us in on your journey. So how's that been, or how have you been since our last episode?
Tanja, hello everyone. Thanks for asking. I recognized, I tracked in the days following creating the episode, and then, especially once it was released into the world, this sense of having a bit of what I felt was like a vulnerability hangover. Like I felt this sort of activation around how my deep and vulnerable and inner dynamics, right? That as I reflected on both, how it came through in the beautiful leading that you offered, facilitation that you offered, that held both this really deeply personal imprint from my early childhood, that has, so much to do with my placement in my family, the character and nature and culture of my family, as well as the broader culture, like touched in a little bit on sort of my deep longing to be someone who contributes to this shift from comparison and competition among women to inspiration and collaboration, and our capacity to really draw one another's gifts forward and recognize that we have, that all of our contributions are specifically unique, and we can together play such an important part in this collective healing, this transformation of the way we are in relationship with one another and the world, if we can support one another. And it was really interesting as I asked myself that question, as I was feeling the deep discomfort around like allowing myself to be seen and really put myself in a position. There's like an underlying sort of like interesting aspect to me that here I am putting myself so vulnerably in a space that I imagine most of the people who are listening are women, right? Who are engaged and drawn, although I'm really grateful for the men who are in this kind of conversation and work, and there's so many out there, and people who identify as non-binary. But I think I placed it in our conversation the last time about kind of the culture among women, right? And how we're kind of implicitly and explicitly sort of conditioned to be in relationship with one another. That I was sort of like stepping into a more public vulnerability, and there's a perceived risk in that, and I was feeling that in the aftermath, and yet that was really what was being spoken to from the inside, and it's sort of like, it's like the poison is the antidote, right? I mean, or sometimes a little bit of what is the thing that we fear. It's like, right, the cave that you fear is the one that you most need to enter, right? Our healing so often comes when we put ourselves, primarily place ourselves in the spaces that where our vulnerability comes up the most. And here I was, doing that, here. And then also this week, and this is part of like the weaving, we're curious to continue to exemplify and unpack and track in ourselves, but invite other people who will be listening along with us. How is what is happening in this space weaving in other spaces and conversations and dynamics and situations we're in, in between? And there were specific ones. I was yesterday at a picnic to celebrate the passing of the Healthy Homes Act, which is something I've been working on with a coalition of community members. And there was a woman there. I want to name her. I can see her in my mind's eye. She has this beautiful jewelry, and she's got this beautiful white silky dress on with purple kind of flowing colors. It's almost like floral, but abstract, kind of a Georgia O'Keeffe. And her hair is, cut short and kind of a little bit fun of a spiky kind of look to it with little like purple hue. And she's an elder, she's an elder in Anacostia. We were right by the river at a park. She works for the FAA, and she's a government, official. And she was so passionately, like, this conversation came out of nowhere. I was approaching these women to get to know them, to talk about, the Healthy Homes Act and why we were all involved in this. And she launched into this, kind of, it was almost like she was, as an elder, taking an opportunity to kind of share from her own experience to impart some wisdom. And it was very much on this topic, of how women are in a relationship with other women. And like, she named it, and she talked about the dynamics, and she, was drawing these examples, and this sense of like, how when we can, she was just calling us out of that. She was calling everyone at that table to recognize we need to take a step out of that. And then so I was like, okay, this is timely, and this is multi-generational, you know, and it's really it's an act. It's something that I think, you know, a lot of us are taking up in different ways, you know. And then also, you know, when I sat with it, I asked myself, why am I doing this with you? Why am I taking the time on a Sunday morning when I'm getting ready to welcome family today and tomorrow? My house has been turned inside out over the last 3 days. You know, why am I prioritizing this space and building our practice, our community of practice together, and inviting others into that? And it's because I I craved for so long to be able to take this step from knowing to understanding, to an embodied, lived, experiential understanding. I had gone, you know, to the retreats and to the trainings and read the books, and I knew, right? KNEW, I knew so much concepts and things, ideas, and I'd read stories of people's healing and transformation, and you know, and their lives shifting and changing, right, in the process, and their relationships becoming more intimate and satisfying and reciprocal, um, and I really was like, I want to live into that. And I have found, right, that these qualities of time, this practice of dropping in, taking it up, you know, with real consistency and vulnerability, and in community and in group spaces, um, has been so key to me being able to live into that deep desire to understand, you know, and to be able to be in a different quality of relationship with myself and with our culture around these things. And it's so, you know, it's ongoing. So that's why, you know, I really was able to answer that. And that supported me to be okay with whatever, you know, comes of, you know, being so transparent, right, in this space. And yeah, so thanks for asking. I think it's a really important things that came through as I reflected on that this week. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jessica. So much there in what you just named, and I think one of the things is, that, as within, so without, that we're in this pulsation. And in our final episode of season one, where we had the amazing Munira Latrash with us, and she was talking very much about, like the sort of the bigger change within leadership and the context of business, and how that inner personal work is absolutely required. And there is this pulsation between the two, and that if we really, I think we are in this space because we are craving that, the change of a paradigm, really the change of how we are as human beings in this world, because we look around us and we see so much pain, so much suffering, so many unequal dynamics, and so much exploitation, and all the things. It feels like such a sick world, and both of us have, but whether you have children or not, but we're looking at, okay, we're bringing these younger humans into this world, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So what can we do? Where do we begin on our little level? And it's sort of the, well, if I really want this change in the world, I really need to tend to how these dynamics are present within me. And it's a continuous process, and I think that's what you named so beautifully right then. It's like, it's not that we go and have one understanding, or we read one book and suddenly we get it and we've shifted. We really, well, as human beings, right, we're always in process, our bodies are always in process. So of course, how we um, act and how we relate to the world is a continuous process. And especially if patternings are very ingrained, it's not going to take just one realization or one knowing about the story to actually shift how it runs us. Um, And I just also wanted to say that that thing about like the fear of exposing ourselves, or the fear of being seen, you know, like we, our sort of ego self is so invested in parts of us not either not showing up as the thing that we either have been told that we are too much of, or we've perceived around us that you shouldn't be like that, or whatever, that it's um you know, that we have the fear of certain things coming out is really, really powerful. and and the vulnerability of being exposed to something that we sort of sense isn't okay in any way, we are very, very invested in that, and we really need to have a very kind of delicate and sensitive space that hold and container that can hold us well to actually start to look at those places. And often, you know, our deeper desires actually reside there, and and we sort of turn away from them because somehow that's not okay. So um, yeah, I love as well that you brought in this sense of synchronicity, and sort of how suddenly, you know, the conversations around us are, you know, come up, you know, sort of unexpected in the, you know, the spaces that we are. And like I think we've said before, often this is what happens when a group comes together as well for this kind of deeper process and work, that often there are strong themes that just arise, and everybody's sort of like um, working with each other and holding each other in, you know, in the similar um, whether it's feeling spaces or healing that it needs tending to, whether it might be grief, or it might be parenthood, or it might be, you know, heartache and heartbreak. And it's, there is some incredibly beautiful and mysterious weaving, and it's really a nice thing to start to open up to that. So also for those of you who are around us listening in, you know, as you listen to this and then notice, you know, if any of these conversations that we are sharing, or perhaps our own personal stories that we are sharing, are reflected in your own life or in your own conversations, you know, just starting to um, pay attention. Because I think also with that, it's like it feels like a holding. It's like, oh, I'm not alone in this, you know, I'm not the only one in this conversation. And then coming to that vulnerable place with it, which will be intensely personal to you, but also knowing that there is some level of shared experience there with others is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I really pick up on that that piece around this recognition that we are, I mean, the enactment of a being in the world in a way that defies this idea that we're alone, because that idea, or that we're individual, that we, you know, we are not, you know, vibrantly, essentially, integrally, you know, interconnected with one another in every possible way, in the most visceral way, you know, in terms of our sustenance and survival, but also in these that we share a psyche, that psyche, PHYCHE, is not a individuated experience. It is a collective experience. And as you were saying that, I picked up also, I had caught another time this week at a graduation party, because it's graduation season for those of you who may be graduating or have graduates in your family. Congratulations. And this was a person who was an artist, and they mentioned this, and it was so, like, again, on point to this topic. And said that in one of the you know, valedictorian conversations that they had, or speeches that they had heard at an art school, this is a magnet school for artists, that the person said, you know, you have something that only you can bring forward. Like, creativity will flow through you in a way that will bring something that is unique into the world. And this is like, your uniqueness is what you're here to allow the creative spirit to move and express through. So as you, it's like, don't compare. And they said, you know, And as you're doing that, as you're allowing your own uniqueness, really catch yourself and be aware if you judge or put down or, discourage in any way the uniqueness of others, the way that creativity is moving and flowing and expressing through your peers, right? And this person who said, I've been an artist my whole life, I've been a playwright, she's probably in her late 50s. She said, and I've heard so many of these speeches at art schools and in different settings, conferences. But this was a unique take because normally the speech focuses on this individualized, this, you be yourself, you be your uniqueness, you be your shining star. But she said it was like revolutionary to her that this second piece was added. And it's also your responsibility to create space, to create the freedom, the liberatory space for your peers to also really step forward with their uniqueness and not be threatened by it, not think it takes away from you, to be inspired by it, and to see one another as your peers for collaboration. So I just thought that was just, for me, another thing. And the other thing I'll say is, I think, our inclination, right, to this season really name something that we want to work on and carry it through, right, to exemplify, to track, and to, unpack. I really think that there's something, really important in that, identifying the thing and letting ourselves really identify what it is, name, to put words to. And that's so much of what we do in the little ways, and then make the commitment to really carry it through over time, because there is, I think, something that, we enter into relationship with it in a different way that allows this kind of continuity of understanding to build.
Yeah, that's I think it's like the first step is like the awareness of something, and then you be with it, and then the also allowing the time for it. So I think this is something important to name, is that you might be aware of a tendency you have, and something that comes up again and again, but you don't necessarily, that does not mean that you can stop it from happening, right? That there is a requirement of a process to stay with something. And yes, the first step, like, often would be just to be aware of, we can speak more to this maybe at some other time, but be aware of like what it feels like to have a trigger, like what it feels like to have reactivity, and that something that's happening is yours rather than just the situation you're entering. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can stop yourself from moving in the same ways that you always have. Like, it requires more attention and it requires more time. So also we need to, and I guess this is part of what we're hoping to do here, is together and with you all, watch the small ways that something might begin to shift. But it's unlikely that something that you've been doing the same way for several decades, by one insight, will change overnight. But that relationship changes slowly as well, but it will do so. But it requires this kind of continuous process, being in process, being witnessing it, and being witnessed in it as well. And I just wanted to circle back to something you said. I think that's beautiful, the things you mentioned in this speech about, because one is that it comes back to what we were speaking to last time, and I think you named, Jessica, about that sense of, oh, well, why should I go out there, and what I got to say, it's been said before, and everybody, but it hasn't been said in your voice. And everybody, we will all hear each other express something in a different way, and something new will blossom from that, a new realization, and it's needed, right? That uniqueness is needed. And then this second part, I just love, and part of that is for sure the scarcity conditioning, this conditioning within our systems that, oh no, there isn't enough for all, so you have to hoard it all for yourself, and if somebody else gets something, it's somehow away from you. So how do we begin to change that and open up and kind of go, oh, but actually it's generative. The more I offer my attention to you, the more it sort of opens up the space. The more love I share, probably the more I will feel. It's like this. uh, but that isn't the way that we've been taught, or that we've been trained to understand things. um, there was one more thing, and now it's elusive for me, around that, the sort of the creative spark and the support of each other. Um, oh, this thing about the individual, and I guess I'm circling away from it because this is actually my thing, as we tend to do. This thing of like, oh, I can do it all on my own, and that somehow there is that kind of validation through that, or this sense that both a sense of, because I think I named this last time in something that I would like to track over this period of time in this season, is this, like, oh, I'm so strong, and but in that, this comes back to what you said, this sense of like, also I'm alone, right? Or I need to be able to be okay alone, which means, and I've watched it in myself lately, this sense of really wanting, like, having the pull, and it feels like a pull that is, it's been inside of me a long time, kind of going, but I don't need you, you know. Like the flip side of, oh, I'm so independent, and I can do it all on my own, is also, I don't need you. Which, of course, if I say it out loud like this, it feels like, but that's not what I want. What I'm even here for in our space, and in any space I enter, is I want to be connected. I that is when I thrive. So what is this piece around, like, wanting to pull away and kind of go, yeah, but I don't need anybody, I'm fine. Don't think that I need you. So that's just weaving in this moment as well as
As you
another.
say that, yeah. Are you complete? I don't want to jump in with that thought. You
Yes,
sure?
yeah. Just like as another sort of thread which weaves into us, into the conversation around that, and the kind of the stances we take within it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think my tendency to jump in was because I was really having a very, visceral, physical sort of response to what you were saying, because I was feeling inside of my body that push pull. I was feeling like this tension, build up, and that is a tension. And I think that going to what you said earlier about the awareness isn't enough to make the change, it alone. And that there is this, once we're aware of it, then there's the decision, the commitment to really turn towards it and to enter relationship with it. Right. And I hear you doing that, and right now, in such a powerful way. And I think that's why I had such a strong, like, intention in my body with what you're feeling, but also a draw towards what you were saying, really wanting to turn towards that with you, because I just feel the potential in bringing and attending to it, coming into relationship more with that for you. So I'm curious if you're interested and willing to maybe do that now. Just turn towards it a little bit and see what your inner being and your heart and your spirit and your body have to share about it. Yeah.
Of course, my immediate response is no, but I'll correct. And
That's always how this starts. Tanya and I are like, well, do you want to practice with that? Do you want to do some work with that? And then we're always kind of like, well, okay. Not really, but
so this is this just to illustrate, because this is the immediate response to move into any kind of discomfort will be no, I'd rather turn away. But this is why we're here, to kind of go, I'm going to turn towards, and yes, I'm ready.
So beautiful. Just like I'd love to start right there. If you feel comfortable, like if it supports the work to close your eyes, just let your eyes close and just notice your body. And just imagine that movement, like that you're right there, kind of looking at that you what you just described, the essence of this this independence and this strength and this inclination towards like that sense of independence and not needing. And then the desire, and just feel like yourself, kind of that first inclination to turn away from it. And then just like turning back around towards it. And just making that full inner turn. It's like it's right there. You're in the commitment to be with it. What I'm noticing in my body right now is
I feel this interesting, like a gripping to just the right side of my forehead, right side of my neck, throat, shoulder, upper arm, like elbow and hand. Like, yeah, it's almost like a pain, like a
mm,
contraction.
mm. So just turn your attention towards that sensation in your upper forehead, down your face, your jaw, your neck, into your right arm. This contracted, almost painful feeling, and just allow yourself to be with it. And if you can almost take your awareness right inside of it, and just allow just a little more space for it. If this sensation right now could speak, what it would say is,
You sort of growl, it would go, oh, I'm holding on, I'm holding on, I'm holding on, I'm holding on.
what I'm holding on to is,
My need to be right,
and
strong.
what I most need to be right about is,
That this is who I am.
what this strength means, what it says about who I am is.
I don't need anybody.
Just allow yourself to stay with that sensation. What I'm noticing in my body right now is
it's still there, but it's interesting that it's just stayed in this one place.
yeah,
Mm.
be continue to stay with it right there. The
I
reason
I just have to say, I feel like what's that look up like? What's that Phantom of the Opera or something? It's like it feels like that mask, that sort of half mask, but all over this side, like from the shoulder down to the arm.
what this is masking is
It's a great, great tenderness right in the very center of my heart.
hmm, to just take a breath right there into that tenderness in your heart, not abandoning or turning away from this other part that's this mask that's activated, but really being with that tenderness too. That little pucker of my lips and that little, the little gesture that your face just made. What that gesture was expressing is
this part feels so small and so vulnerable.
yeah.
I'm so
So
scared.
just so scared.
Scared and sad.
Hmm. Just drop your attention right with that part of you in your heart right now, that tenderness, that sensation of being scared and the sadness. If this part of my heart that feels so small could just turn towards that gripping, holding mask, just turn from the heart, kind of looking up at it. What it would say is,
You scare me.
because
You're cold.
what scares me the most about you is
That you keep me alone.
Tanja, just take your hands and just place them super gently, super lovingly on your heart. Just take a few breaths and just be with the sensations that are coming, just letting them rise. The feelings that are moving from my heart through my face right now are
I feel very tired.
yeah. What feels tired about this is
Um, a struggle
yeah.
and loneliness.
Yeah.
Mm.
Just tune back into that right forehead and side of the face and arm and that sense of the mask, and just let the mask and that part of you be able to look back down into that tender place in the heart, and hear it in that last thing that it said, you keep me alone. What the mask would how the mask would respond to that is
Just trying to protect you,
from
not being seen.
why I feel like you need protection from this is
Yes, if you ask to be seen and you get let down, you will crumble.
and if the heart were to respond back right away, what it would say is
That this is what's destroying me.
hmm,
My joy is being erased.
by
The grayness by the oppression.
of
You.
and the mask would say back,
Sorry, I don't see that. I haven't seen that.
now that I see it,
I wish I can let go a little.
And the heart responds to that with
I just need some space
two.
to live, to find. I'm having quite a strong like visual of like this little creature who's in a little gray blue dress, but wants to like grow and put on a bright yellow dress.
I love that. So let that happen.
To be out, not in this oppressive gray prison, but wants to like roam a meadow and go into the forest and dance and see the butterflies and flowers.
Yeah. Let the mask look at that vision. Just let the mask take that in, all of you, both the tenderness in your heart and the place from which that vision is sprung in this process, and let the mask that part of you that's trying to protect, it's the impact is as you said, keeping you small and feels limiting and gray and imprisoning and small, but the vision mask can see the vision. And what I'm noticing in the right side of mine face and shoulder and arm now is
It's releasing, it's softening. And there's a sense that actually what it hopes to do is move into the back more as a kind of supportive structure, like to allow space for this life, but to be a protective kind of force from the back.
So let that happen right now. Let that beautiful, joyful, freeing space that was held, in your heart. Like it's like you imagine, like as it's already happening, it happens spontaneously in you. So just creating space for that whole scene, that forest with the butterflies and the flowers and the joyful yellow dress and the dancing, and just letting that grow inside of you and letting that protective strength and capacity, to stand in many ways, on your own, that obviously has value and serves you, but let it kind of recede as you described it more to the back so that you can lean into it. It's there, it's accessible, but it's not sort of wrapping around and sort of obscuring and masking and pushing down that other capacity and desire to be in connection, to be in a relationship of exchange of needs, to be needed and to need others. What I'm noticing now is
I feel much more spacious. I feel like a sort of released hope and joy. But I also feel like a different kind of strength, a strength that doesn't come from sort of gripping or holding or pushing, but more like a holding, like I feel like I can lean into my back body for a safe holding. And yeah, I also feel tired.
It's exhausting, right? It's really exhausting to be living from through, right, this protective position and this need, this holding on to the independence and so strongly, right? So just take a few breaths and just let everything you so beautifully described there, that, is all there, right? Just opening up to the shifts and the spaciousness. Just a few more sentence stems. From this inner posture, in this relationship between these aspects of myself, what I'm ready for is
allow for deeper connection, deeper intimacy, to trust.
just take one more breath and just feel into that readiness. Move your body in any way that would feel aligned in this moment, stretching into that, letting your neck, arms, shoulder, face. Thank you, Tanja, for offering yourself here. Really beautiful work.
Thank you, Jessica, for your always such wise guidance and holding me in it, holding us in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just invite. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just like feeling into the space, the little kind of journey that I've just been on, and all of you have been on with me. And I'd just like to offer an invitation to stay with anything that resonates with you, because I sort of feel you all there, and I appreciate you bearing witness to the places I went, and just feel into your own being if there is anything that's sort of arose from being in this process. And if you are able to stop a moment or close your eyes, obviously if you're walking down a street or you're driving, then that's not appropriate. You can just keep listening, but see if you can feel into what's moving inside of you, and maybe open yourself up, just as Jessica was guiding me with these incomplete sentences. Just feel into the next few, what comes up immediately for you. So just a few for everybody to feel into. The way I feel about having to do things on my own is. Notice any words or how the sentence completes, and also how it feels in your body. My capacity to ask for help is. Just one more little contemplation. Where I strive or yearn for greater connection right now is. And what's holding me back is. And then just breathe a little. And of course, these little prompts, ideas, thoughts can stay with you and might stay with you just as contemplations. And I hope that through just being with us in this space, maybe the notion that you are all alone is somewhat challenged, because I'm sure through some of the sharings, at least, you will recognize parts of you that we share in this human experience in our unique ways, our beautifully unique ways, but also shared ways.
Thank you, Tanja. I really honor and appreciate, your capacity to be able to be in available and lean into your inclination to move from your deep work to holding an offering for all of us, to be with it, to be with the themes and the living themes that are so present. And I think I really, I think this is such this piece that you're so beautifully and courageously exploring lives so differently, in each of us. And there can be these real similarities and also, this idea of just, I want to, the theme, because sometimes we do find ourselves, having to, in order to, to come into and to open to relationships that are more aligned and more satisfying. I mean, I know, I've brought this up a lot in the last, year or so, this sort of idea, this realization that I had, where it's like, I am in the process of recreating a life, like redesigning, if you allow me to use a house metaphor, like a restructuring, a renovation of the home that I built. If my life, my context, my community, my all of it. And there are and that I built this home making choices about where to put everything and what materials to use and how it would flow and all of it through my conditioning and through my wounding, that was very much unhealed, unattended to, right? In the years that I set the foundations for this home and made a lot of those choices. And so then this process of what does it mean, what is changeable and what is shiftable, and how can I be in good relationship with the community and the home and the people that I've invited into it to create life with me. And also be an authentic relationship that might take me away from and create a separation and a situation of aloneness, right? People, when we're healing, and then we recognize that perhaps the relationships that we're in do not align with, and we try, oftentimes we make, sincere effort to call the relationship into a process of reflection and to see, like, is it possible, right, to heal and to grow together? And it not always is, right? And sometimes people in our lives are very unwilling to participate in that process, right? And so it's that there's pain in that, and then sometimes there's efforts that don't work out, and then there's different kinds of pain in that, and then we find ourselves like having created a situation where we are alone. And now as I'm talking, I'm like, I think, there's pieces of your story that are further in the past for you that resonate with that, right? Because you made choices and then you were positioned as a single mother, right? To create a home and a life and to build foundations that story of aloneness and independence, right, takes on its own qualities and contours, and then other folks who just, I think, wherever and whenever we go through that process, I can think of several other people at different ages and stages of life right now who are in that journey of like placing themselves in more aloneness because there's a need to separate from, to let transform or transition relationships that no longer are aligned or served, and then to be in the aloneness. What does that mean? And then what the sense that we make of it and the place that we go with it, and whether or not, and the way, the process that is involved then in making invitation and taking up new relationship, which I know that you part of what you're navigating is involves those pieces. And I think I'm heading in a deeper way into that phase of recreating community and relocating. And yeah, I'm curious, this has stirred a lot for me, and if folks want to share, and as our season develops, if something moves for you and you'd like to, reach out and maybe come and join us and, be in relationship around something that's weaving from our threads we're weaving into your life, and offer your perspective, because I'm feeling into all the many storylines, and the ways they're lived on the themes that you really lived into in your practice today.
Yes, I'm glad we have many more episodes to continue, because there's definitely a lot of material here, and some very, very big and potent themes to continue to explore. Yeah, as always, if you're listening in, let us know how it resonates with you. If you want to, you can connect with us on the various platforms, or personally if you see us on a more day-to-day. And we will continue our journey and just weaving in this sort of way.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing I want to add is just really in my heart in this moment is the recognition that this piece around individuality and being separate and the virtue of independence, I think there's so much that we all can take up to really blow that up, and live interdependence. And one of the things that, like, you in your work, you touched on so deeply, the capacity to, in our own selves, break through that and reach out and express vulnerably, which we started this episode with, let ourselves be seen in our need and our longing and our desire and our aches. And also I want to make the invitation for us, another way to blow that up and to begin to live something differently, is to recognize the people in our lives who are living alone and whose circumstances are such where that sort of virtue of independence may be blocking, you or other people from reaching out to check in on them, to recognize that there are unmet needs, and the need for one another that we really have, that our society so carries us I don't know, away from in different ways, that we can reaffirm it in gestures that we can make to reach out to the people in our lives who are living alone and who don't have that, built-in connection of people in their homes to, however challenging the relationships, but to be there with them and to be in relationship with them. So I just wanted to, share that. It was in my heart as we close.
That's a beautiful invitation, and kind of like, again, this the pulsation, between tending to our inner parts and maybe our inner lonely alone parts, but also then recognize it around us and seeing, what we can do in a very immediate, practical, and real way, which begins to shift all of us.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being with us, for those of you who've joined, and we hope to hear from you and connect again soon.
As always, and thank you, Jessica, and we'll see you next time.
We appreciate your presence in this space. If you sense that friends, family, or peers would benefit from leaning in, please share.
If an episode speaks to you in a particularly meaningful way or raises questions that you would like to share with us, we would love to hear from you. You can connect with us here on Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram at leaning_in_.
Leaning In is produced by Tanja Mikwitz and Jessica Lusty. The beautiful music you hear here is provided by Masood Ali Khan. Our sound engineer is Marley Mikwitz Montgomery.